Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. The first overall pick of the NHL entry draft is a prestigious honour, but it comes with some pretty lofty expectations too. Being taken with the top pick might legitimise you as the best player of your age group in the entire hockey world, but it comes with the requirement that you are ready to jump straight to the NHL as a teenager and immediately make an impact in the best league in the world. Though many first overall picks have gone on to have long, successful, or even Hall of Fame careers, there's no guarantee that the premier pick will turn into a superstar. After all, guys like Alexander Daig, Rick DiPietro and Nail Yakupov were all top of their respective draft classes, but their careers would turn out to be disappointing at best and downright terrible at worst. However, one player would perform even worse than these three, and his entire career would be defined by one embarrassing event. This is the story of Patrik Stefan, from first overall pick to empty net blunder. Before we begin, my new show, the Europuck podcast, is releasing its first episode tomorrow on August 28th. So if you're interested in listening to me discuss all things European hockey, from the Russian KHL to the Swedish Hockey League, all the way down to the lesser-known European leagues like the British Elite League and even the French League, subscribe to the Europuck podcast YouTube channel. A link will be in the pinned comment and the description down below. But anyways, on with the video. In order to tell this rather disappointing tale, allow me to take you back to June 26, 1999, when Czech forward Patrik Stefan, who had spent the past season and a half with the Long Beach Ice Dogs of the now-defunct IHL and had scored 35 points in 33 games during the 98-99 season, was selected first overall at the NHL entry draft by the league's newest expansion team, the Atlanta Thrashers. Atlanta had actually began the day of the draft with the second overall pick, but some last-minute wheeling and dealing from Canucks general manager Brian Burke helped the Thrashers jump up to first and take Stefan, while Burke took the Sedin twins at second and third. I think we know who won that trade in the long run, eh folks? Though he had missed being eligible for the prior 1998 draft by just a single day, Stefan held the #1 rank on the NHL Central Scouting list due to going over a point per game and being named an all-star at just 17 years of age, in a league regarded to be the second best in the world at the time. So to most people, he looked like the real deal. Stefan may have been taken at the top of the draft, but that doesn't mean there weren't a few question marks surrounding his game, the most prevalent of which being his health. Thanks to a pair of pretty serious concussions during his draft year, in which he woke up in the hospital both times, and thanks to being sidelined with an injury during the World Junior Championships, scouts and GMs around the league began to wonder whether Stefan could stay healthy enough to play a full 82-game season in the fastest, strongest, and toughest league the hockey world has to offer. Despite these questions, the Thrashers knew that Stefan's raw talent and sky-high potential far outweighed the possibility of him struggling with injuries during his career, so they figured it was a no-brainer to draft him to their team. However, over the next half a decade, things wouldn't quite turn out the way that Stefan or the Thrashers would have liked. As the 99-2000 season fast approached, Stefan would earn a place on the Thrashers roster out of training camp and suit up in his NHL debut on October 2nd, 1999. After registering the first point of his career with an assist on the Atlanta Thrashers' first goal in franchise history, the Czech forward was able to produce a decent rookie season in the NHL, scoring 5 goals and 25 points in 72 games. These numbers may not look like much for a first overall pick, but when you realise that Stefan was the 6th highest scorer on a Thrashers team that won just 14 games that year, he made the best of a tough situation if you ask me. Over the next 4 seasons, Stefan would continue to suit up for Atlanta and look to improve both his own performance in the league as well as the Thrashers' position in the standings. Unfortunately though, Stefan was unable to become the point-scoring superstar that he was expected to be out of the draft, as he scored 44 goals and 128 points in 278 games, his most productive season being a 14-goal, 40-point year in 03-04. Now, it's obvious that Stefan hadn't lived up to the expectations that come with being a former first overall draft pick, but one could argue that this inability to reach his potential was primarily caused by the continued injury problems he had faced since entering the National Hockey League. During his first 5 seasons in Atlanta, Stefan sustained such injuries as a broken jaw, a broken ankle, and a hyperextended elbow, which caused him to play less than 70 games in 2 of his first 4 years in the league, the lowest being 59 games during the 01-02 season. In fact, these injuries caused Stefan to miss 62 total games between 1999 and 2004. That might not sound like much, but for context, that's 3/4 of an NHL season in the span of 5 years. Sure, you can't blame his lack of production solely on his injuries, as he was in the lineup more often than not, and there are plenty of star players in the league who get injured and still produce solid numbers, but the injury bug following you year after year doesn't exactly help you find more consistency in your game, does it, folks? Despite these struggles to stay healthy, Stefan had time to turn things around. He was still just 24 years of age, and the best years of his career were certainly yet to come. Right? After taking his talents to Finland during the 04-05 lockout and producing a point-per-game performance for Eels, Stefan would rejoin Atlanta for one final season, score 24 points in 64 games during the 05-06 season, before being traded to the Dallas Stars on June 24, 2006. This meant that after 6 seasons with the Thrashers, Patrik Stefan had scored a grand total of 59 goals and 177 points in 414 games. So a former first overall draft pick, someone who was considered to be the best player of their age group in the entire hockey world, had scored at less than a point every 2 game pace over half a decade into his NHL career. Injuries or not, those are some pretty disappointing stats from your franchise's first ever draft pick. I mean, you'd expect those kind of numbers from a role player in your bottom 6, not the first overall pick in the draft, but I digress. Stefan would welcome his trade to Dallas as he saw it as an opportunity to make a fresh start and suit up for a star-studded roster full of Stanley Cup champions like Mike Modano, Sergei Zubov, and Marty Turco. Not a bad group of players to share a locker room with, that's for sure. As Stefan would don the Stars jersey for the very first time, the Czech forward would embrace a different role on his new team. Instead of playing in the top 6 and trying to rack up points against the other team's best players, the 26-year-old would instead play in the bottom 6, using his speed and hockey sense to become one of the team's top shutdown forwards and a regular on the penalty kill. This more defensively minded playstyle would increase Stefan's on-ice effectiveness, but it would come at the expense of his point production, as he would register the lowest point totals of his entire NHL career. If that wasn't bad enough, Stefan would continue to deal with injury problems throughout his tenure in Dallas, playing just 41 games during the 06-07 season. However, one event midway through the year would transform Stefan from disappointing top pick to owner of one of the biggest gaffes in NHL history. On January 4th, 2007, the Dallas Stars visited the Edmonton Oilers for a regular season game at Rexall Place. Though Stefan had scored the lone goal for the Stars midway through the second period, Edmonton were standing head and shoulders above their competition thanks to a 4-1 lead on the scoreboard. That is, until 4 unanswered goals from the Stars gave Dallas a 5-4 lead with just over 12 minutes left to play in the game. With Dallas unable to extend their lead for the rest of the third period, Edmonton pulled their goalie in a last-ditch effort to tie the game and take it to overtime. The Oilers may have added an extra attacker onto the ice, but Stefan was able to strip the puck from Edmonton defenseman Marc-Andre Bergeron and found himself on a breakaway towards the empty net. With just a handful of seconds left to play, all Stefan had to do was shoot the puck into the open cage. But rather than risk missing the net from afar, Stefan continued to skate towards the crease with the intention of casually backhanding the puck into the goal. However, as he was about to put the game away, the puck hit a bad patch of ice and bounced over Stefan's stick, causing him to miss the goal and overskate the puck. As Stefan desperately tried to put the puck into the open net as he panicked and fell to the ice, he instead pushed the puck towards the other end of the rink, where Oilers forward Alice Hemsky took possession and scored with just 2 seconds remaining. So Stefan's lack of focus, his attempt to make a play in his panic, and thanks to a little bit of puck luck, one of the easiest goals a player could ever hope to receive, ended up becoming a tying goal for the home team in the final seconds of the game. I bet Stefan wishes he could have that one back. This empty net blunder has since gone down in history as one of the biggest fails the league has ever seen, as fans both past and present continue to try and wrap their heads around how something as textbook as scoring into an empty net on a breakaway could turn into 6 seconds of shock, drama and hilarity. Despite this costly mistake, the Stars were able to win the game 6-5 in a shootout, and Stefan would finish his season in Dallas without any further embarrassment. That said, he would score just 5 goals and 11 points that year, which is just as embarrassing if you ask me. Unfortunately though, Stefan's recent gaffe, coupled with his lack of production, gave the Dallas Stars no desire to re-sign him when his contract expired, a sentiment that would ultimately be felt by the rest of the National Hockey League, as no team signed him for the upcoming 07-08 season. So not only would Stefan be unable to put this blunder behind him, his NHL career was all but over. So after 7 seasons in the National Hockey League, Patrik Stefan scored a grand total of 64 goals and 188 points in 455 games. Not only that, but his career in the best league in the world had concluded with one of the most egregious mistakes any hockey fan has ever seen. If that play against the Oilers doesn't summarise Stefan's entire NHL career, I don't know what does. So why didn't Stefan live up to his potential? Why was he never able to score more than 40 points in a season, and was out of the league at just 27 years of age? Well, if you ask me, I think his injury problems were the biggest cause of him never living up to his top billing. For example, if Stefan didn't receive 2 serious concussions in his draft year, or suffer a broken jaw and a broken ankle during his early years in the league, I think we would have seen him come much closer to being the point-per-game player that he was predicted to be out of the draft. After all, facing a serious injury year after year between the ages of 17 and 24 is going to affect any player's development greatly, regardless of where they were picked in the draft. Sure, you can't blame his lack of scoring solely on his injury history, as he was in the lineup more often than not, and he had plenty of opportunities to put the puck in the back of the net, but I'm sure there were many games where Stefan was on the roster, but he still wasn't 100% healthy yet. I bet there were many times when he was focused far more on making it to the final buzzer in one piece than he was scoring a hat-trick and getting the first star of the game. One factor that works in Stefan's favour though, is just how awful the 1999 draft ended up being. Though it was considered by several sports outlets to be one of the deepest, most talented draft classes the league had seen in quite a while, only 6 of the draft's 28 first-round picks reached 500 NHL games played. Hell, there were only 3 star players that emerged from the draft, the Sedin twins and Henrik Zetterberg, who was taken in the 7th round. Given how terrible this draft was from top to bottom, Stefan could have easily gotten away with his numbers, or lack thereof, if he was taken at any other pick than first overall. As the draft's premier choice, the expectation to perform is much higher than anyone else selected, so you have to work harder and play greater if you want to be seen as worthy of being drafted so high, a position that has been filled by superstars and Hall of Famers in the years before you. Being taken first overall might mean your NHL career begins on top of the world, but you have much farther to fall than anyone else selected, something that Stefan would experience firsthand. Following his lone season with Dallas, Stefan would take his talents across the pond to Europe and sign a 1-year contract with SC Bern of the Swiss National League. Stefan chose Bern due to their rock-solid reputation in the European hockey circuit, as well as Switzerland being home to some of the best medical professionals in the world. Though he had joined the NLA in the hopes of re-establishing his career and maybe even making it back to the NHL one day, just a few games into the season, Stefan was told by doctors that he would need to undergo open surgery on his hip, not to help his career, but to save his mobility long term. Even after he embarrassed himself in front of the entire hockey world, he still couldn't catch a break from the injury bug. Talk about bad luck. Having already undergone hip surgery during the off-season, and with his career as a hockey player practically over at this point, Stefan decided to announce in October of 2007 that he was retiring from playing hockey at just 27 years old. So after 3 games and a single goal with Bern, thus ended the career of Patrik Stefan. Given how banged up he was over the years, and just how many serious, potentially life-altering injuries he had to deal with, you can't help but feel for the guy. I mean, the guy had the weight of the hockey world on his shoulders as a first overall draft pick, and while he was trying to achieve those lofty expectations, his body kept breaking down on him so he couldn't reach them. To be honest, he's kinda lucky that he managed to play in the league for so long and get the hip surgery when he did, because he could have dealt with far worse consequences both in his career and his life after hockey if he had just tried to push through it and pretend he was fine when he clearly wasn't. Having called it a day on his career, Stefan would quickly transition to the business side of the game by becoming an agent for pro and junior players. Stefan would continue to represent the likes of fellow countryman and NHL netminder Michael Neuwirth until 2015, when he took his talents behind the bench and joined the Detroit Junior Red Wings as the head coach of the team. Over the next 3 seasons, Stefan would serve as either the head coach or an assistant coach for both the Junior Red Wings and the Little Caesars under-15 team, before heading west to Portland for the most recent 1920 season. While in Oregon, Patrik has taken on the role of billet parent for his son James Stefan and his friend Jack O'Brien as they embarked on their major junior careers with the WHL's Portland Winterhawks. So he may not be playing anymore, but Patrik Stefan is still active in the hockey world to this very day. Though he has gone down in history as one of the worst first overall picks ever, and he is the face behind one of the league's greatest gaffes, thanks to a number of serious injuries and him beginning his career on a newly formed expansion team, Patrik Stefan had a pretty bumpy ride in the NHL one way or another. Sure, he didn't light the lamp as often as he should have, but you don't get to play in the best league in the world for 7 years if you're a bad hockey player now, do you? He may not have been the superstar that he was expected to be, but his costly mistake in January of 2007 has certainly made him one of the more memorable players around, albeit for the wrong reasons. Hey, it's better to be remembered for how you crashed and burned than be forgotten for playing mediocre, eh folks? And that's the story of Patrik Stefan's journey from first overall pick to empty net blunder. What do you guys think about Stefan's NHL career? Do you think he would have lived up to the hype if not for his many injuries? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching and goodbye! A big thank you to Antti Hannanen, Chris Gadsby, Connor B, John Plomin, Jordan Whitehead, Martin Tolness, Paul Mallia, Roman from London, The Legacy and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.